top story today, President Trump moving to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook over allegations she falsified documents on mortgage applications. The move is Trump's latest in his pressure campaign to get the Fed to cut interest rates and opens the door to securing a majority for his appointees on the 7-member Fed board. Well, markets are reacting on the back of this news very much as you would expect. Seeing quite a lot of red on the screen there. We've seen some declines for the US dollar. S&P futures also pushing down by about 0.1%. One beneficiary, bottom of your screen there, yes, it's gold. Haven demand propelling gold higher by 0.25%. $3,374 an ounce right now. Okay, let's get some insights on this story from our panel of guests. Danielle DiMartino Booth is a former advisor to the president of the Dallas Fed. She's currently CEO and chief strategist of QI Research. And joining us from Singapore is Polka Mishra, partner at Javelin Wealth Management. Thanks for both joining us today. Danielle, I'd like to start with you. Simple question, really. Is this move even legal? And could we expect Governor Cook to challenge it?
From everything that I've read, and I am not a legal expert, there is indeed the opportunity for Governor Cook to immediately go to the courts and ask for an injunction such that she stay in her position while the courts decide what the path is going to be. Again, I'm no legal expert, but everything that I've read this evening since this news hit suggests that she can indeed make every attempt to stop this right now.
All right, well, let's get you out of the legal weeds and onto some firmer ground in terms of, the market implications here. I mean, does this say to you overreach? How dangerous is this kind of move?
Well, when you consider the number of individuals, the two dissents, Michelle Bowman, Christopher Waller from the July FOMC meeting, the fact that there's another nominee who could get really confirmed before the Fed next meets in mid-September, and now a potential fourth individual to the Federal Reserve Board. You're talking about a majority here, potentially, again, of 4-3 on that 7-member Board of Governors. I can't overemphasize enough the import of this, because it's not just sway over the Federal Reserve Board, but indeed individuals who run the district banks around the United States of America. The Board of Governors has to sign off on each individual before they are appointed in each of the individual 12 districts. So this could carry deep, deep significance in terms of the ability of President Trump to theoretically stack the Federal Reserve and the Federal Open Market Committee.
Well, let's get to some of the market reaction on this. I want to get to Polka Mishra there in Singapore. So Polka, the reaction been very much as one might anticipate. We've got every major equity market in the red right now. The dollar weaker, gold is higher, treasuries have gained as well. So look, when it comes to Fed independence, even the suggestion of political interference, is that enough to make markets very, very nervous?
Absolutely, Paul. I think we talked about it earlier as well. It is one of the biggest risks that we are facing the market at this point. We saw earlier when Donald Trump attacked Jerome Powell, I think it was in April, and markets reacted very sharply, and Scott Bessent had to come down and calm down the market, saying, no, nothing's happening to Jerome Powell's tenor. So it basically makes investors question the fundamentals on which the U.S. market is built. It is one of the pillars that provided the stability, which is the Fed independence. And that happening at a time when investors are already grappling with fast-changing, haphazard policy making, tariffs being announced every second day, being taken back, taco, it dents investor confidence even further, and investors will and have been looking at moving more and more away from the United States.
Do investors and markets have some power over this, however? Because you mentioned before, we have seen Trump reverse some policies. We now have the infamous acronym, maybe the acronym of 2025, TACO. Trump always chickens out. And we've seen him back down before when he saw the bond market get, in his words, yippee. Could we see, is there potential here for a market tantrum or a meltdown? And could that potentially cause a back down or a reversal.
It is. If you look at both short-term and long-term reactions, it happened. It's exactly as you said. Trump thought that, as the president, he can say and do whatever he wants with the Fed, and markets reacted sharply. It's when the longer end of the curve got impacted, and that seems like the trigger point. When that gets impacted is when the pressure is back on the White House to maybe back off a little bit. So it is a natural correction. If investors are reacting, money is flowing out. It really also starts to question the longer debt and the long-term viability of the U.S. debt. It is increasing every year, and the cost of servicing that will increase further as investors start to demand more and more premium. And with that big, beautiful bill, that's already a risk to the market, and this exaggerates that further. But if you look at it, at some point, investors have to think that, okay, market correction will push back a bit, but at the end of the day, this is an ongoing saga. This is a trend, and you need to diversify away from the U.S. dollar, which is happening, and we've seen that with the move towards gold, central banks piling up on gold, trades happening in different currencies. So that move away from dollar, move away from U.S., the U.S. is going to have to pay a lot more premium for holding its debt. So there is a trend that will still continue in the long run, even if in the short run you get some correction, because this is not stopping.
Danielle, I want to return to you. You were a former advisor to the president of the Dallas Fed. Can you perhaps give us some idea of what sort of conversations might be taking place at the moment among staff and among governors when it comes to interference and the impact on Fed credibility?
Well, so I was inside the Fed for almost a decade, and I can tell you that independence in and of itself, the ability of each district to choose who leads them, who's going to be the president of each individual district, the idea that Federal Reserve governors should have a majority of Senate votes, not be votes that are along partisan lines. These are all sacrosanct. And they're very much cherished at the Fed, even though there has been a lot of politicizing of the institution over the years. The idea of direct interference, I should say, would be seen as being existential, an existential threat to every district, an existential threat to the Federal Reserve Board, and an existential threat that I think the U.S. Supreme Court in May tried to indemnify, tried to make sure that it would be safeguarded by reiterating that individuals on the Federal Reserve Board cannot be fired for anything other than cause, which of course we're now seeing President Trump try to make a case for. But again, there are some very, very serious discussions that are happening, I can promise you, across the nation because of the threat that this is posing.
Ultimately, though, all Fed governors are political appointees and all do require confirmation, as you were describing a little bit earlier. But is that necessarily a guarantee that a Fed governor is going to act to the political leanings of the person who appointed them? I mean, obviously, Jay Powell was a Trump appointee, and he's getting a lot of heat from the president for not behaving as President Trump would like him to.
So, Paul, I actually think you bring up the most important question, and I thank you for asking it. Just because somebody is appointed by any individual does not mean that they are necessarily going to betray their leanings, betray their beliefs when they do happen to be actually on the board. And I think that is something that we should bear in mind. Christopher Waller, Michelle Bowman, they've all had independent voices of their own in the past. Just because they dissented once certainly doesn't mean that I think you can presume that they're going to be joining Team Trump, so to speak, and be against Powell. I think each individual's integrity should be unquestioned until they're viewed as being overtly political. Paul, again, you're asking the most important question. Just because you're confirmed by the U.S. Senate does not mean that you're going to kowtow to what the administration or the president would like for you to do once you're actually in that position.
Yeah, Danielle, we're just hearing now, according to the Washington Post, Lisa Cook says she will not resign. She disputes President Trump's authority to fire her. She also says that no cause exists for the president to fire her either. This is according to reporting from the Washington Post. So Lisa Cook refusing to step down and disputing the president's authority to force her out. Polka, I do want to return to you now for some more thoughts on this. I mean, what's the more urgent concern for the Fed at the moment? Threats to its independence and credibility, or is it just good old inflation and employment data as we count down to that September meeting?
So I think to Danielle's point, I would like to add there that there is the point around not questioning the integrity of the governors and that they will act in according to their responsibilities. However, investors are a little more fickle than that. Investors get more worried about it. So it's also about what signaling this is sending is very important to keep in mind when you're thinking about market reactions. In terms of the September meeting, I think one rate cut is baked in, 25 basis points. I don't think that there will be much, the inflation, there won't be too much of an inflation surprise to change that decision. Labor market, it's not weak, but it is showing signs of weakness. So it is probably the right time for the Fed to not be too behind the curve on that. But this actually throws, this action this morning throws a lot in the spanner in which you question the decision that the Fed is taking. Is it under pressure from the White House, and is that why this decision was taken? So there's going to be a lot of questions that will be raised by investors, and the decisions will be made based on that.
Does any of this political pressure cause you to adjust your thinking around rate cut bets and timing, or like the Fed, are you just continuing to look at the data and look at market conditions?
No, we have to look at everything. I mean, all this plays a role in it. I think markets will factor in a more dovish Fed going forward, especially after Jerome Powell's term is over. And there may be some euphoria in the market because of expected lower rates in the short term. Because remember, there's the short-term traders, there's the long-term investors, but the risk to the longer term, and we are long-term investors, we are more concerned about what it does to the U.S. economy on the whole.
Danielle, I just want to end this conversation with some of your views. There's a move against Lisa Cook. She's refusing to go. Once this is over, though, do you suspect there might be more pressure on other Fed governors to go? Or do you suspect President Trump, if he manages to secure a majority of his own appointees on the board, that will be enough? When are we going to see the end of this is basically what I'm asking.
Gosh, Paul, I wish I could even begin to venture a guess as to when we see an end. 12 months ago, I would have never thought that I would have seen this happen, much less see the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics be called down from her post as well. To Polka's point, everything right now makes us very nervous, including whether or not there's a next person who may or may not be in the crosshairs, and for that matter, whether or not we're going to be getting good data coming out of the new Bureau of Labor Statistics as early as September the 5th. So many open questions. I wish I could be more definitive on what the U.S. president is going to do next.
All right, Danielle DiMartino Booth, former advisor to the president of the Dallas Fed. Thank you so much.